What makes a product not just desirable, but absolutely necessary in the minds of customers? Well, in this discussion, we're investigating the psychology of product development and marketing with Laurier Mandin. He is a product marketing strategist who has spent over 3 decades guiding hundreds of innovative products to market success. As founder of Graphos Product, he's helped numerous startups and established brands through need-centric product development and compelling marketing strategies. With a deep understanding of consumer psychology and behavioral economics, he brings a unique perspective to product creation and marketing. He's also the author of I Need That and creator of the Product Knowledge Podcast. You'll come away from this conversation with fresh insights and practical frameworks for creating products that customers don't just want, but they feel they absolutely need. And if you're listening to us and rather watch the video version, go to our YouTube channel. Simply search for Product Mastery Now on YouTube. Let's learn to create products so compelling that owning them becomes non-negotiable. Right after this.
How can you unlock your full potential as a product manager? We're sharing the product management insights you need. They are based on the 7 research-backed knowledge areas for product mastery. You'll learn to create products customers love, enhance your influence, and elevate your career. Welcome to Product Mastery Now, hosted by Dr. Chad McAllister, product management professor, practitioner, and your guide.
Laurier, thanks so much for joining us today.
It's great to be here, Chad. I've been listening to your back episodes, and there's so much great inspiration that I've been finding, some of the great stories you bring in and the guests. So I'm really honored to be here. I'm honored to be a member of that prestigious guest list. It's
I'm
great
delighted
to talk to you too.
Yeah.
After you listen to so many episodes with a host, you start to feel like you know that person. So it's kind of strange coming and meeting you today where I know you, but you don't know me yet.
Well, I have ran into that, right? When I show up at a conference and someone comes up and feels like they know me, and I love that, but it is a little different. I'm delighted to find out about your work. There's a few people I really love talking with, and I break those down. It's the person doing deep research, maybe the professor. It's the person that has had senior level positions in a few companies, not just one, to have some idea. And then it's your type role who has worked over decades for so many companies on so many different product projects that you really have gained a deep understanding, getting insights into how different businesses work and what really has to happen to create a product customers love. So when I found out about your work, I was just delighted for this opportunity. So glad we get together to talk. I do want to make a connection to that most recent book that you wrote, I Need That. You discuss, it's actually in the subtitle, this concept of compelled to buy. How do you think of a product that is so compelling that we have to buy it as being different from what we often hear in product circles, this product market fit concept?
Yeah, that subtitle, Creating and Marketing Products People Are Compelled to Buy, almost wrote itself because that was really kind of the explanation of why the title exists, I Need That. And product market fit is such a deep part of that, of making people feel this compulsion to own something. And it's not about trickery and misleading people to think that they want something or playing mind games with them, but it's about, right from the start, planning, developing, engineering products that naturally fit with that particular type of customer. Mm-hmm. So product market fit usually focuses on whether or not a product satisfies a specific market need well enough to sustain itself and hopefully to grow. But being compelled to buy something goes so much deeper. It starts with understanding the psychology of what transforms a want into a need, which is what I call in the book the flip. And all of our needs, aside from physiological ones, are entirely a construct of our mind. We don't need products in order to survive. We don't need products in most of them, to keep us healthy and growing. But when our mind flips a want into a need, then all of a sudden owning it becomes entirely non-negotiable, and we're going to overcome any kind of friction or any barrier to get it. And so that's what I'm writing about when I'm talking about creating products that people are compelled to buy. And traditional product market fit usually focuses on mostly rational factors like features and pricing, market size. But brain science shows us buying decisions happen in milliseconds in our emotional center, what I call, it's usually called the limbic system. I call it the dog brain because of the intense emotional responses and impulsive behavior that happen in that part stem from that part of the brain. And that's where most of our decision making actually happens. And we later go on to rationalize it in our rational neocortex. So when somebody is compelled to buy, they've moved from being in this place of this seems useful or this could work to I need that. They're not comparing features anymore. They're not doing the rational assessment so much as imagining their life with your product and feeling genuine excitement about owning and using it. And then this distinction really matters because products that merely satisfy a need face constant price pressure and competition, and they're always trying to break through that wall of you versus them. Whereas products that trigger an I need that response break through the friction and resistance in ways that what I would call traditional product market fit doesn't address, because it's looking at a different way of getting to desire or good enough or right inside of the buyer's mind.
I think that's a key distinction, good enough versus absolutely needing it, right? The compelling to have to buy it. Yeah. I'd like to get into this dog brain just a little bit more with you. We've talked about jobs to be done on this podcast a lot. It's something I share with my university students quite often as well. And those three kind of dimensions of any job, the functional job, the emotional job, and the social job. And I often share, if you're not connecting with the emotional job, you're not going to have any kind of competitive advantage. That people connect to the emotional aspect of what they're trying to accomplish, and that really draws us in. You know, with your background in psychology too, I just want to kind of understand that element a little bit more. Our dog brain that makes perhaps that less rational decision first, based on some other factors. What can you share about that?
Well, I think the most important thing is you're connecting the functional outcome with something that's emotional. And so in the book also, there's something that I call the coveted condition. And that is essentially what we dream about becoming. I use a little sentence structure that is, I need the product name to become that coveted condition, desired future state. And once we uncover that and recognize what it is that our customers can see themselves and aspire to become by using the product, now we're in a different position where we can start to build that emotional desire. And one of the things that I talk about is we know that the neocortex, the rational brain, is very slow moving compared to the dog brain. The dog brain is at least 250 times faster when it comes to pulling decisions and emotions and processing images. And that extra speed and the ease is really important, because the rational brain isn't really, it doesn't like to use all that energy. There's this big imbalance of how much energy, the brain is only about 2% of our total body weight, and yet it uses 20% of our energy in order to do what it's got to do. And so we're very much geared towards not turning on all that thinking. But one thing that happens very easily, if you're in a class with a boring instructor and you're having trouble following it, there's something that your brain does with great ease, and that is go into a daydreaming state and starts fantasizing about things that it would rather be doing and things that it likes to do. So if we're able to get the dog brain to feel this emotion and trigger the rational brain to do its easiest work and to do daydreaming about the product. And I give some examples in the book about how I've experienced that in my life with various products, and you see it in successful products all the time. If you can trigger that buyer to envision and fantasize about themselves enjoying that coveted condition and being that better self, it's kind of how if you see a truck ad, that Ford F-150 bouncing over these great big boulders in the mountains, that's not what you're going to do with that truck. But the feeling that you give the buyer about all the power and freedom and all those feelings, and that the position that puts that buyer in, now you're talking about coveted condition. And that's why that's much more effective than showing what somebody really does with a pickup truck, which is kind of mundane and day-to-day boring most of the time. You're driving people places and loading your gear into it and then just driving down the road and listening to their radio.
Right. Which requires a clear understanding of the customer and what they care about, right? Like I was talking to a Tesla Cybertruck owner recently, and some people, regardless of performance, they regard the Cybertruck as it just looks odd, right? His position was, this looks like science fiction, like something out of Star Wars, and I just love it, right? And being aware of what it is that your customer is dreaming about, right? That they want to share some story with. I'm glad you shared that difference in dog brain thinking and energy levels, right? The being so much faster to look for that thing that we kind of identify with. That's really helpful. I want to talk about your background of work here, because a lot of us have had experiences developing products, understanding customers. Some product managers, product leaders come from a marketing background, but we don't always connect those two disciplines. And you seem like you have the intersection of both of these. Can you just describe that a little bit about how that has maybe shown up in your work, how you see product creation and product marketing intersect?
Yes, and I've always been much more on the marketing side, but I've been very fortunate in my career to work with product developers and engineers and the people who are at the ideation and the product development side. And really, and ideally at least, they're completely inseparable. There's a strong tendency, especially as brands get bigger and bigger, to treat them as entirely distinct phases where you only move over to marketing when development is complete.
Right.
The most successful products are conceived with marketing already in mind, at least on a basic level. And when you understand the emotional triggers that we were just talking about that make someone say, I need that, you design the product entirely differently, because you start by prioritizing features that spark emotion. You create onboarding that delivers immediate gratification so users feel successful right away. You build in shareable moments, the kind that are going to get customers showing off their own experiences so other people will see it and get excited and say, I need that too. And I find the most successful innovators that I've worked with think about the dog brain in one way or another, whether they're using that term or they're just thinking about the excitement, and they stop asking, what features should we build? And they start asking,
Right.
what's going to make someone's eyes light up when they see this? I think really importantly is not what is minimum viable, but what's our minimum wow?
Mm, yeah. Yeah. I usually use if I'm thinking of MVP as the minimum valuable, right? Not just viable,
Yeah.
but what is creating. And I like the wow aspect, certainly, right? Bringing delight. This marketing distinction, as you said, is often something marketing gets involved later after the products, needs to be communicated to the marketplace. What does marketing bring to the table when they're involved in the beginning, when we're trying to understand that customer and what we need to create for them?
Yeah. Well, and again, that separation is completely understandable because the skill sets and the ways of thinking are really different. Engineers and marketers really don't think the same way at all, at least most of them. You get some outliers that kind of do have a natural crossover, but engineers and product managers tend to be best at functional outcomes, and marketers are way better at thinking about that wow, because that's their job, is to get there, and they're going to be tasked with that when it pops over to them anyway. So product teams build what they think makes sense, and then they throw it over the wall to marketing to make people want it when it's ready. But at that point, no amount of clever marketing can make lots of people feel
Right.
they need a product that wasn't designed to trigger that kind of an emotional response. So instead, I think companies should first introduce marketing thinking at the concept stage and have marketers involved in early product discussions, focusing on the emotional reactions you want to trigger. I think of Johnny Ive at Apple, who designed a lot of their most successful products, starting out with the candy-colored iMac. And he often talked about how product development, design, and marketing are inextricably linked. And connecting those skill sets, creating feedback loops between them is so important so that you're able to not end up working backwards and have people spending so much time. That's, I think, one of the reasons why cracking product market fit is so hard, is because you're creating these functional outcomes, but not really getting into the brains and the needs of the people who are going to be using it. So you go in after the fact and you think, okay, how are we going to connect these dots? What are even the dots that we're trying to connect? And becomes really this kind of dissecting instead of reverse engineering that wow outcome.
Yep. Yep, absolutely. I want to bring up a program that I'm very proud of called the Rapid Product Mastery Experience, the RPM experience, which is how I help product managers really learn the knowledge that they need to have, right? It's organized into 7 research-backed knowledge areas to help them perform at their highest levels. This isn't for new product managers. This is for people with some experience to really help them take their job to the next level, their career to the next level. And I also do this for companies. And I'm bringing it up because when I do it with companies, it's over 9 sessions. We meet virtually as a team of product managers and other people involved in product at times. And it's really great to see the other functions. And for this one company, one of the people that was not a product manager that was involved in the group was from, maybe it was called strategic marketing, something like that. And we got to like session 7. And all the way along, this marketing person would share like a little insights about the customer, but not enough to be particularly helpful. And after these 7 sessions together, the person said, we've actually done a lot of research on this customer in the last 6 months. I think I can share that with you. And it was such an incredible breakthrough that we had developed some trust, apparently. And they had done lots of research that product managers would be drooling over to know about further insights into these customers. You've worked with lots of companies, right? That probably doesn't surprise you any. And I was delighted to be part of that transformation and with that group of people, that they were going to do a better job sharing some information. But what do you think about, these are, like you said, typically different functions. They're not always communicating well. What do you think about that? How do we do a better job of getting this information shared?
And it's a really, unless you're able to kind of engineer that into even your HR, the way that you recruit and bring people in, right? Because you really are trying to mix oil and water on some level. And unless you have some mustard in there, you need some way of bringing those elements together and getting feedback loops to work. And you mentioned trust as well. Is I think by making that really required and getting people to open up and making people feel that they've got that safety, that they can come in and share what may not be easily grasped by their teammates and partners, which is what they really are. But essentially making sure that communication and those loops are happening. And that's the good thing about a loop, is that you can make it more round as you go and you can make it more comfortable. So it's very much like training muscles and getting people to grow into those roles, then kind of pushing them into it and saying, you guys are going to work together on product development now. Marketing is going to be involved in what you guys are developing on the product side, and vice versa, that there's going to be a high level of interaction between those different parts of our organization.
Yeah, that's really good. And senior level help certainly makes a difference. I was talking with a CPO not too long ago, and they reorganized, moving the entire marketing function of the organization under the CPO to try to be more product driven, right? And the transformation is underway. I haven't had a chance to hear how that's working, but my assumption through that is some recognition that product and marketing should be more tightly integrated because they are interdependent.
Yeah. And as you said, if it doesn't happen at leadership, it's very unlikely, or through leadership, without that vision and recognition, I think it's very unlikely to happen organically. You might get some people within the team. You might hire a Johnny Ive that is recognizing that he's got to be closely involved with engineering and bringing ideas and having that fluidity to go between those things. But most often it comes from leadership recognizing that is something that's valued. And in order to get to where we need to go faster, more effectively, and more successfully in the end, that we've got to bring those levels of thinking together.
Yeah, good point. At this point in your career, you've worked on over 1,000 products and their marketing. I'm curious what patterns have kind of stood out that you say, when these pieces are in place, I recognize that this is really going to be something that is compelling for customers, that they have to have it, right? It's going to be compelling and make them buy. What are patterns that we should be looking for, trying to make happen for that to come about?
And there are really patterns. The most compelling products share a bunch of key characteristics that you see happening from one to another, even if they're not, if these aren't in their goals, but you'll see it in pick a product that is highly successful, that's coming into almost every market now, is competitive. And that's something that's really changed. But the number one thing is how much better products aim to be coming out the gates. They don't tend to just be incrementally better and succeed. And that's because in order to really stand out, and not only to stand out, but to break through, you have to be at least 10 times better than existing solutions. And I outline this in the book in ways that matter emotionally to buyers. So not just marginally or incrementally better, but dramatically better in every possible way. And there's research behind this that shows why that 10 times number, as high as it seems, because I think many innovators even would say, if something is twice as good, that should easily be enough. It's like it's 100% better than what's out there. But that the subjectivity behind that and how consumers and innovators value on the consumer end what they have and innovators what they're making is two different scales. So the research shows that the consumers tend to overvalue what they already have, the status quo, by a factor of 3. And at the same time, innovators overvalue the product that they're making by a factor of 3, which creates a 9-to-1 mismatch that has to be overcome by the product. 9-to-1 means you need to be 10 times better just to break through. So what you think is twice as good needs to be, in order in the customer's mind, needs to be at that level where on all the different measurables and comparables, that it's better at every single one. I think that's something that when Tesla came onto the market, they weren't just an electric car that had a decent battery life. It was more powerful. It was more user-friendly. It had these crazy door handles that popped out, and it had all these different features. It was literally better on almost every measure that you could compare it with an existing car, and still wasn't so dramatically weird. The Cybertruck kind of breaks that mold because the customer base is established and people have that level of trust and desire already. But in order to break through, most products, I talk in the book about this cycle computer that I got and how I had this speedometer on my bike as a young cyclist, and this thing was easily 10 times better. And because of that, it created this need and this fantasy for me, and it fulfilled that 10 times better very easily. And I would say other big products like the iPhone, for example, was, again, easily 10 times better than these stylus-based, very hard to work with touchscreens on the Palm Trio and BlackBerry that people were carrying.
Remember the Palm. Yep.
Yeah. Well, I had one of those when I got my first iPhone, and it was a perfectly functional, it was a color touchscreen smartphone, and I had that distinct, I need that response when first seeing the iPhone.
Right. Yeah, absolutely. So if we need products that do such a much better job that are connecting emotionally to customers, is the answer to that customer research?
Customer research is part of it, because if you don't know your customer, and that's a really strong or significant falling down point, tripping point for most products, is there just isn't enough, or there isn't the right kind of customer research to understand if customers really want this thing, what outcomes, what kind of use case, what the customer really wants to get out of it, and what it's going to take to get the product to that level. So research is one thing, but I think also really important is just that emotional understanding, being able to connect to that coveted condition, that future state the buyers dream about achieving, and how great products transcend tools by using that. They become pathways to who customers want to be, instead of becoming something that you buy and something that you shop and compare with other items.
Yeah.
And finding ways to deliver immediate gratification to that dog brain, right? To be able to get people to feel truly excited about something, to get to that minimum wow. Sometimes the way to doing that isn't through tweaking features and adding more of them, or better understanding what other things people need to do with the tool. It's getting people to be excited about what the tool can do. And that's something that customer research does help with, because customers will tell you when something excites them and when something doesn't and when it falls flat. So that's really important.
Yeah, looking for those emotional connections and what they're trying to reach towards.
And getting good at creating them, right? So
Yeah.
it's one thing to know what emotional connection you're trying to do, but sometimes it takes trial and error in different campaigns. And that's one thing that's really great with the way that we run ads now, is it's so nimble that we can really kind of macro test things and scale up what works and quickly throw away what isn't working,
Right.
and work towards getting those emotional responses, getting
Yeah.
those strong feelings from people.
And there's some good opportunities out there that you could really dominate a market if you wanted to try. Lots of challenges along the way, but I know a number of brands that are, I'm here in the US, you're in Canada, that are not North America companies, where literally it's a factory manager making the design decisions for what the improvements are going to be to the next line. And they don't have clear connections with customers that are using their products, which just amazes me how often businesses succeed, not because they're doing a great job, but they're not doing a worse job than their competitors, right? And so I think we have these opportunities. I want to share maybe an off-the-wall example that I was just thinking of. So recently, our boiler at home went out. So our boiler generates hot water that heats the house and also hot water for domestic water use. So we have hot showers to take. So it's a very important thing. It's kind of like a furnace, but you run water through it instead, right? So that's what a boiler is. And I am emotionally connected to such a positive experience because the installer did a great job of telling me why this was the right boiler and why he uses it. So the brand itself. But I'm pleased with the outcome. It looks clean, and I learned a little bit more about I like learning about how all these things work and do a lot already, but you know, learn a little bit more from him. And he just did a good job of making a system that looks, I'm probably a little bit nerdy about this, but looks great, right? All these copper tubes that go everywhere and connect up, and the overall performance is just delightful to me in some way. And I'm now that you're talking about this, I'm like, did I make an emotional connection over this mechanical system that got installed in my house? And how did that happen, right? Any thoughts on that?
Well, that's a great example. And I think I can relate, because a couple of years ago we did a big renovation and did a bunch of plumbing work, and the electrical was all redone. And it's just beautiful, the job that is done with all that. And as a result, it feels like everything works better. You have more confidence in it, and it becomes something that is more than just something where you turn on a switch and it does what it does. It's that you feel that there's some mastery involved, and that you do have something that's crafted in a way that's especially good. And I really do believe that's something that is important with anything that we use. If we feel there's craftsmanship, we value it more. If we feel that there's love that went into something, whether it's something that someone baked for us or something that we bought, that is really significant. I could tell my daughter that I've made her a sandwich with love, and she's going to go, and she's 10 years old, and she will think that as she's eating it, and I know she's going to enjoy it more. So that there's no doubt about that there's emotional connection that comes from feeling there's craftsmanship. And I think that's sometimes why, when we have behind the scenes and when companies share how things are made, the more of that IKEA effect that we get when we build something ourselves, we value it more. And I think when we see even the construction of something, we value it more for that same reason, right? Especially if we see the construction of something and we recognize that there's extra care and attention that's gone into that, which can be reflected just even by great user experiences when we are using a tool and things are in the right place. Unlike the other thing where it's kind of messy and we're always looking for where that's hidden, and it's bloated because somebody couldn't make good decisions before it got to me, then that's lack of care and attention. It's the opposite of what you're feeling with your boiler.
Yeah, I appreciate you adding some insights into that, right? Because it seems strange to kind of have an emotional connection to this thing that's very mechanical, right? This it was a beautiful job, and it works well, and I'm very happy. So
That's it, but it translates directly to a product. And that's the interesting thing
Right.
about it, is that is a product. It's and it's very similarly a product to a SaaS tool that we might invest in. It's just the care and attention shows in a different way.
Yeah. Okay. That's really good. So, for product managers who are thinking about this marketing side of their products, I know you talk about some frameworks in your book. We're certainly not going to hit them all, but give us kind of just a picture of frameworks we should be thinking about that could lead to products that really do hit this compelling value proposition we're trying to reach.
Sure. And my favorite, and the one that I use the most directly with clients when we're doing our go-to-market roadmaps and when we're looking at a product and we really want to understand it, we use one that I call the CLIMB framework, which stands for Customer Life Improving Mechanisms and Benefits. And it helps to identify 4 levels of need that your product addresses. And any good product addresses at least one, and some of them hit on multiple. Rare ones hit on all of them. But so it starts at the bottom with functional needs, which are things like saving time, reducing costs, improving performance, the things that we typically think we buy a product to do. If you're
Right.
buying a drill, you're buying that drill to make a hole, at least we think. But we're probably buying that drill not just to make a hole, we're buying that to make a bunch of holes and to put together a fence so we can have privacy and so that people can't see in and out of and run in and out of our yard. So there's a bigger thing that comes from that. And I get that would take us to that next step up, which is the emotional needs. So we have that feeling of security, pride. Other things will give us belonging or enjoyment, or the big one, status. So that's step 2 up the climb ladder, is emotional needs. And from there, we go to transformative needs, which are things like health or our sense of purpose, our relationships, our confidence. So a given product might bring a functional need plus a transformative need. And some really rare products bring what are transcendent needs, which are the things that are bigger than the owner themselves. So it's things like helping others, or a positive environmental impact, or something that helps build a legacy in people. So those are the 4 levels: is the functional, emotional, transformative, and transcendent needs. And the most compelling products typically address needs at multiple levels. And what we do next using the CLIMB framework is determine what the most important applications are, what the most important needs are for that particular product. And we can also, once we understand and know them, it really helps with things like creating content and campaign building, and even identifying audiences, because we're looking at, okay, these are the most powerful needs that the product addresses. Who are the people that are going to appreciate these the most? Who are the people that are going to feel these needs the most and are going to value them? And you can use that in crafting personas, or in taking these buyer personas you're creating and looking at these needs through the eyes of that person to say, this person is going to really appreciate that this makes the status need that it's fulfilling. It's making them feel like they're a better parent. They're driving a safer vehicle, and now they're going to feel that they look like they're more successful, and they look like they prioritize safety more than they would if they were driving some other vehicle.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, look for those smaller segments to really delight customers in specific ways, and then it's much easier to expand out. I love that information. One thing I do appreciate about your book, and as many listeners know, if you've been listening for a long time, I tend to not read books in their entirety beforehand because I always find I'm more curious when I don't. But I did look through your book enough to kind of know how it's structured, and I really appreciate that it is a how-to book. It's not a book that is just written by a consultant or a coach to gain more business and doesn't really tell you how to do things. You can read this and pick it up and go, oh, I can actually work through the CLIMB framework and put this into action. So I appreciate you making that available for product managers. We'll get back to that in just a moment. I do want to ask you for an innovation quote, which we always love here. First, I did mention this rapid product mastery experience that I have used with companies to really get their product managers all on the same page, being more capable and being more confident themselves. And when we can work in, as I shared, that strategic marketing person really can supercharge what's going on in an organization from a product perspective. It's also available independently for the individual. It's self-paced program that you can work through to really get a solid foundation. And again, like I said, not for new product managers. Typically people 3, 5, even 10 years of experience are doing this to fill in the holes in their knowledge. If they want, they can gain professional certification from an independent organization, PDMA, as well. And it's a great way to kind of level up and get ready for your next career move. If you want to look into details of that, simply go to productmasterynow.com and you'll see the different trainings there. One of them will be the Rapid Product Mastery Experience. Appreciate you checking that out. Let's get to your quote and what that means. What did you select for us?
So my favorite quote that I picked, I thought, as far as innovation goes, is a Steve Jobs one. It's innovation distinguishes between a leader and a follower. And I've got a chapter in the book about, it's called You're Not Apple. And essentially the root of that is that when I talk to clients about what companies they admire, and when we're looking at we always ask in branding, in terms of the way that user interfaces are done, the way that we arrive at connecting with our customers, which companies inspire you and what would you like to be like? They almost always say Apple. And the thing about that's not surprising because that's a company that I mention all the time too, but you can't copy Apple. Apple is the most successful company potentially in the history of the world. And if you copy an innovator, you're a follower. And so I think we really have to understand what is innovation. And to me, innovation is all about seeing something that others haven't and implementing it in a way that easily transports users into that coveted condition, that better version of themselves. And as marketers, it's our job to show them that connection and to get them dreaming about it. And that's what innovation is all about. So that's what makes the difference between being a leader and creating a challenger product or a me too or something that is just maybe incrementally better than something else that's out there.
Yeah, back to what you said before, that 10x improvement. So great quote. Thanks for sharing that with us. Laurier, how can people find out, certainly get their hands on the book? Best place to go is for that. More about you, more about the work that you're doing?
Yeah, the best place to go to find out more about me or to get the book is lmandin.com. And I have links to where you can get the audiobook or the Kindle e-book or paperback or hardcover of the book. And also what I would really love if people would do is sign up to my daily emails. I'm getting good traction with those. And like the book, the main goal of those is to give people takeaways. So at the end of every chapter in the book, I have these key takeaways and action items. So they're things that you can do right now to apply what's in the chapter. And that's my goal with these emails as well, is to give people information and then always this action for you at the bottom is how can you move forward today so that if you follow my emails 365 days of the year, you're going to move forward one more step. And I know that as I feel with writing these things, that the readers come back and tell me that they feel that they're making the progress as well. And to me, that's one of the best things that as a writer and a consultant that I can do.
That's fantastic. And perhaps it's a bit of a stage of life issue that you're purposely trying to give back to the community, help others be more successful at creating products that are so compelling. People can't resist them. And I appreciate you making those resources available. And as I said before, like the book is action oriented. You can pick it up and learn how to make a difference in the work that you're doing. So thanks for sharing those resources.
It's my pleasure. And yeah, with the emails, you're absolutely right. One of the things I tell people to do is if you have a question, if there's something you're working on, send me an email. I'll always respond to you and I will give you my best, most helpful answer because that's part of having this community. It's not just necessarily people that might become my client at Graphos Product, which is the business that I started 30 years ago that led me to all of this. But there's just so much important stuff that we can share in building a community of makers and creators and marketers.
Yep. And Graphos Product is still going strong. And if people want help, certainly can look into that as well. Laurier, thank you so much for being part of this conversation. Really enjoyed the information about how can we build such compelling products people can't say no to them.
Thank you. It's been a real delight. I really enjoyed every minute of this.
Likewise. And for listeners, if you want to find the written version of everything we discussed and links to all those resources that Laurier has available, simply go to productmasterynow.com/533. And if you want to find us on YouTube, just search on Product Mastery Now on the YouTube channel. As always, keep innovating.
Thank you for listening to Product Mastery Now, where product leaders and managers gain product mastery through practical knowledge, influence, and confidence. By listening, you are becoming a product master, creating products customers love. Find additional resources at productmasterynow.com. Keep innovating.